And the last project I want to show is our chronology for designing the Heritage Hall for Mayo Clinic. Mayo Clinic is probably the most famous medical clinic in America, and one of the things that they've done is develop a significant presence in their headquarters town of Rochester, Minnesota. They also have 2 satellite facilities, one in Scottsdale, Arizona, one in Jacksonville, that we did some exhibit work on as well. When we get a project like this, it's kind of like writing a book. You write the book, you write the script, you get the storyline, and then you figure from an environment standpoint, how does that book, or how does that abridged story wind up manifesting itself in a space? And one of the things that we've learned over time is how you partition or cubicleize a space, and is based on how much someone can absorb from that space. Because if you put horse blinders on people as they're walking through that space, they can focus more on the content that's in front of them as opposed to looking at the broad space as a whole. The other thing you can do with how you partition that space is that space being, let's say it's 5,000 square feet, it may be perceived that it's 10,000 square feet by the way that you walk through that space, as opposed to seeing an entire vast space in front of you. So as we look at that content, we look at how do you get those storylines to connect with this, let's say, a balloon diagram. How does that storyline connect? How does that storyline flow into the space? We look at where are the entry points to the space. At first we had 2 entry points. We talked to the client in terms of how we back it off to 1 entry point so we could control the flow of the story better, rather than have someone come into the middle of the story. And then we look at how that space, what is the nature of that current space. The nature of that current space was that there were 2 separate buildings coming together, so we had 2 different ceiling heights. We had an exterior window that let in a lot of light. We had an interior curved window that you see on the other side that has visual clutter of people walking by. So looking at how we deal with those various issues. We brought in a sound designer in terms of how we quiet down the space, because the architects wanted to use all hard surfaces on the ground plane, so you had no absorption on the carpeting. So what we did was we had attenuating surfaces on the ceiling that you'll see in a minute. Back to how we manage a process like this, because the story is multi-chaptered, what we do is we take that and we zone the spaces within the area so we can manage it from the content flow standpoint and our management on our computer servers of the various parts of the story, so it doesn't get jumbled up, and we know what the deadlines are for the various pieces. We can manage the sound, the interactive media. We can manage the visuals. These are some of the early sketches for the space. And then this is the ceiling plan. This is a detail, and how we wind up detailing some of these things. We may, when it goes to the fabricator, we might wind up sending some hand sketches to kind of complement some of those, so they understand how these details are going to work. From a interactive and sound standpoint, we've got a master plan and a closet that would contain all the equipment. And then these are the details of some of the casework. This is the final space. You can see all the surfaces are fairly hard, including the auditorium. Everything you see here we pretty much designed. The ceilings, the stone cladding, the desk, the custom glass piece for the vase. And then we try to add a little bit of their past history. We found some stained glass that they had from the 1912 building. When the 1912 building came down, they had the cornerstone, they had the stained glass, we brought some of those elements in here to bring back some anchor post of history here. And in the ceiling plane, we stretched fabric with attenuating materials. We have speakers that are essentially sound arrays that are 3 by 3 feet. So when you're standing where you are, to me, you wouldn't hear what I'm hearing underneath this speaker, which is behind the fabric. We wind up collaborating with a number of people. We wind up collaborating with our own staff. So the process that we go through is not an individual process by someone just individually doing this project. It's a number of people. And in the case of Mayo Clinic, we wound up working with their architects to implement the space to our design. So everything has to be something that's a give and take. You may feel very strong about a certain design direction. We may hear some things that we don't want to hear from the client. There may be great things that actually change it for the better. So it's a collaborative process. What we do is, and I go back to this idea of context. You want to hear the story, which is either for the signage programs that we do. You want to know what the context is, so you craft that design to be based on the expression of their needs or their narrative. What I've brought in here, after we're all done here, if you're heading out of here, I've got some process books on Mayo Clinic and Sony, and a couple of copies of a book that I've written, which is I think in the library. I don't know if you've placed it in the library, a beer. But I think at this point I'd like to just kind of open it up to some questions or comments.